Welcome back to Fantasy 1.0. This week we're going to talk about who to sit, who to start, sleepers, DFS values, and maybe some games I'm going to bet on. Week 1 of NFL football. Okay, everybody, so excuse the production quality. My producer's not here, but I want to get this out before, everybody's setting their lineup and filling up their DFS cards. So let's get this party started. Let's get this show on the road. Okay, so I'm going to talk about players by position who are sort of on the bubble. You know, these guys would be probably chiming in at your wide receiver 3 or your flex or maybe your RB2, or maybe you got 2 QBs and, you're deciding on which one to start. Okay, so speaking of QB, let's dive right in. Okay, so start Andy Dalton. Start him over guys like Russell Wilson. I question the Indy secondary, so we'll talk about it later, but this is why I think AJ Green, Tyler Eifert, and even Ross are pretty good picks too for stacks, but again, that's later on. But either way, start Andy Dalton. I expect that to be, hopefully it'll be a bit of a shootout, but at least I think Cincinnati's going to start their season off with their offense off a little bit better than they did last year. It was a disaster last year, the first 4 weeks. Phil Rivers. So Andy Reid has Phil Rivers' number past few years when the Chargers and the Chiefs played, but he doesn't have the secondary that he had in previous years. So I think that Rivers has a good shot to pick up or to put up some serious numbers. I think this game's going to turn to a shootout, actually. I don't remember what the over-under is, but I'm sure it's pretty high. Jared Goff. I think you should slate him in too. I know people see him as a bit more of a game manager. He doesn't seem to be sort of, thrown downfield en masse. But I expect him to pick apart the Raiders secondary pretty well. And that game is definitely going to be, I think, a landslide victory for the Rams, even though they're playing in Oakland. All right, those are my quarterback starters. So guys that I think you should sit and hopefully didn't waste too much draft capital on. Number 1, Russell Wilson. He's playing in Denver. They've got, I forgot the guy's name who they drafted. But anyways, they've got crazy pass rush. I don't know how their offensive line is going to hold up to that. So that's going to affect their run game. That's going to affect Russell Wilson scrambling. Doug Baldwin seems to be okay. He's not on the injured list or anything like that. But who's to say how well he's going to be trotted out in the field? Sit him. Jimmy Garoppolo, handsome Jimmy, he's playing the Vikings, so I'd stay away. They're definitely not. San Fran's definitely not going to be able to run the ball, and I question how well he's going to be able to pass it either. So another guy I want you to keep on the bench. Big Ben, so Roethlisberger. He's got, as you know, he's got terrible home road splits. So with that being said, there's also the question of weather, Cleveland looks like, so they're playing in Cleveland, and looks like it's going to be a terrible, terrible weather forecast for them all. A lot of mud, a lot of rain, a lot of wind. Stay away from him. Pat Mahomes. Likely if you've got Pat Mahomes and it's not a 2 QB league, you've got another quarterback, I'm sure, that he's sort of backing up. Take it easy on him week 1. First of all, even though Bosa's not starting for the Chargers, they still are going to have a pretty good pass rush. Chargers are going to have a good D, and they're going to have a good offense. They're going to have a good team this year. Hold off on Mahomes depending on the other quarterback that you have week 1. Just to wait. He's got a lot of weapons, but just to wait and see what you get. All right, boom. Let's move over to wide receivers. So Kenny Stills, plug him in. If you got him on your bench, depending on who else you have in terms of wide receivers and running backs, plug this guy into your wide receiver 3 or flex. Devontae Parker's not playing. Tannehill's going to be trying to throw the ball. I expect them to be down against Tennessee. So, again, that ball's going to be going downfield. Danny Amendola. So, if you remember last year, Landry Jones, and better said 2 years ago when Tannehill was the QB, he loves throwing to that slot receiver. Amendola, if you've got him, especially in PPR, trot him out on the field until he gets hurt. So, definitely keep an eye on that guy. And if he's in the end of your bench, consider putting him in there. Emmanuel Sanders. So him and Case Keenum established a pretty good rapport during the preseason. From what I recall, DeMarius and Keenum did not. So look for Keenum to look for Sanders quite a bit this year. Starting this week. So that's a guy that I think that you should consider starting too if he's sitting on the bubble. Just to dispel, well, first of all, no, let's start. Okay. Chris Hogan needs to start. He's likely sitting at your wide receiver 2, maybe even wide receiver 1, depending on how you drafted your team. They're suiting up 3 wide receivers. New England is. So I expect Chris Hogan to have a big week. Edelman's not back yet. He's going to come back till week 5. So, yeah, get Hogan in there, definitely. Also a good play for DFS, but we'll talk about that later. So, brings me to your studs. Okay, so, you spent the draft capital on these guys, be it in a standard draft or an auction. Start your studs. So for example, OBJ, I've had people asking me, do I start OBJ? They're playing against Jacksonville. And say, yes, you start him. And the weather's going to suck. Just start your studs. If you drafted anybody in your first 3 rounds, put them out on your team. I mean, they're going out there week 1. You need those guys through thick and thin to give you numbers. And by the way, if you look at guys like DeAndre Hopkins, they did well against Jalen Ramsey in Jacksonville last year. So just a little reminder and to sort of keep mind of that as if you're like, wait a minute, do I start David Johnson this week? Yes, start David Johnson this week. I mean, don't be silly. Okay, so moving on to guys I don't think you should start in terms of wide receiver. Will Fuller, I expect him to suit up. He's injured. I just don't know what you're going to get yet from him. So depending on your roster makeup, if you can do without Will Fuller, then plug somebody else in there you think's going to have a bigger week. Watch I say this and he's going to blow up. But don't take my word for it. Demaryius Thomas, remember I said to go after Emmanuel Sanders. If you got Thomas and if you've got a really solid wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1, and he's the 3, or maybe he's sort of competing for the 2, keep him on your bench this week. I know that Seattle's secondary isn't what it used to be. But yeah, I don't know. I think he's going to start to show his age this year. Maybe that's just me, and maybe wait till week 2 or 3 to start doing that. But I think that we're going to see a lot more from Cortland Sutton this year as well, in comparison to Thomas. So I know I said start your studs, but just saying with caution. Doug Baldwin, he's hurt, and I just don't like ever starting guys against Denver. Start them. But when you're playing DFS, keep an eye out for guys like that because you're going to want to sort of hold back on them. But yeah, start him, just sort of a little asterisk beside, drop him down a bit and what you're going to be expecting from him in terms of performance. Josh Gordon. So before I heard about all this weather, and I'm not somebody that sticks on weather and hangs up myself on it, says, oh, no. Like, weather's going to be bad, so absolutely I'm not going to start anybody in that game. Like, I don't play that game. But it's just, so Josh Gordon's hurt. Hugh Jackson says he's going to have him on a pitch count. So, and the weather's going to be bad. Now, this offsets me saying start your best players. Always start your best players. So, if you've got somebody that, like, let's say if you got Kenny Stills and Gordon, depending on how the matchup looks with you and your opponent, maybe you want to hold off on Gordon because Gordon could light it up. I mean, this guy could be weatherproof. We already know he's almost suspension-proof and practice-proof. So, you know what? I'm just saying, another guy to sort of proceed with caution. Little asterisk beside Josh Gordon as well. Okay, let's go into our running back land now. So James Conner, last I heard, and right now I'm sitting at, what time are we right now? Saturday morning, 10:30. So Lev Bell hasn't shown up. Lev Bell's not playing anyways, even if he is in camp or is at practice. So Connor's going to play. I think they're going to make an example, like not an example, but I think they're going to give him a lot of run with the ball. Bad weather or not, and it is going to be bad weather, at least it projects to be. So I expect him to get a lot of touches, a lot of ball that week. Just to sort of show the team that hey, we can do this without Lev Bell. So yeah, I think that they're not going to be taking it easy on him at all. Kenyon Drake, another guy. I expect big things from him this season. I project, bold prediction. I think he's going to be going in the first round next year. So Kenyon Drake, I don't think you should even be sitting on the bubble with him. He's probably going to be your solid RB2. But just to sort of reinforce it, start him against Tennessee. This whole talk about Frank Gore and him sort of co-starting games, Gore might run out on the first series, like out of respect, let's say. But this is Drake's year. If Drake runs with it, which he will, I think he was top 5, and I think he was first in running back yards for the last 4 games of last season. They gave him the ball, and he literally ran with it. So, Kenyon Drake, just put him in there. He's going to give you RB1 production this week, in my opinion, in my projection. Derrick Henry. I think that, I think Tennessee's going to be up a bit to Miami to the point that I think they're going to start, being able to run the ball. I expect Derrick Henry to get a touchdown and get quite a few carries. I'm in the minority of Derrick Henry camp people. I think, or Derrick Henry truthers. I think that he's going to have a big year, regardless of Dion being on the team or not. So I stand by it, and I'm telling you to start him on week 1. Alex Collins, another game is apparently going to be a big mud fest, a lot of rain, a lot of wind, and a lot of crappy Buffalo. So Buffalo's got a decent D, and they've got a good defensive front, namely, but I expect Baltimore to just crush them. They're Baltimore's D to just crush the Bills' offense, and I expect them to just start handing the ball off to Collins, pretty early on in the game, and just to continue on with that. Okay, so running backs, I don't want you to start. So I don't want you starting Alfred Morris. I don't want you starting Matt Breida. I don't want you to be starting San Francisco backfield against Minnesota. Week 1, Minnesota's. I mean, they look great. A lot of these week 1 games are hard to predict. You don't really know what you sort of are thinking about last year's team when you come into this year, but just play it safe. I'm sure that you picked up Morris and/or Breida as soon as McKinnon went down. So you've already had your team drafted, probably. So yeah, don't start bumping them again ahead of guys that you already project as like your RB2 or your flex. Keep those guys on the bench week 1. Same goes with Chris Carson, and Rashad Penny, obviously, because he's still, it's Carson's backfield for now, but either way, he's going into Denver. You'll probably have somebody better. If you don't, watch out. You're probably in trouble. Marshawn Lynch, again, if he's sitting there on your flex, your RB3, don't play him this week. He sounds like he's a little bit banged up. I don't know what they're going to do with Doug Martin. His yards per carry looked pretty good in the preseason. It'd be ridiculous if they gave him, if they did like some sort of a 50-50 split. I project that to be Lynch's backfield. But again, a little bit banged up against a really tough Rams D. I'd stay away from it. All right, so then, again, draft your studs, right? But guys, I just want to put an asterisk beside. In other words, don't expect a lot of production from them. So maybe, again, and these are the sort of recommendations I make, as in start these guys, okay? Because you drafted them. The guys I'm going to mention, you drafted them in the 2nd, the 3rd round. It's just when you're filling out the rest of your team, look for maybe some of your higher upside guys. Your wide receiver deep threats, the guys that can give you big weeks. If your team projects to sort of, finish 10 points lower than the team you're matched up against in week 1, consider doing things like that. But these guys are going to have to play. So Dalvin Cook, number 1. He probably went at the start of the 2nd round. He's still banged up. He didn't get a lot of run in the preseason. So I don't know how much they're going to use him, even though I do project them to be up quite a bit and start running the ball. I think this might be a week for Latavius Murray. I think they might just sort of hand it off to him, and maybe it's going to be a bit more of his backfield this week. Once the game starts to not be too important anymore. Anyways, it'll be first if it happens how I project, that it'll be Garoppolo's first loss as a Niners quarterback. So don't hold me to it. I mean, what is he, 5-0 right now? Second guy, and hopefully I'm going to mention this, LaShawn McCoy. So he's their backfield, right? He's probably going to be getting, Peterman's going to be terrified of throwing 5 picks in the first half like he did in his debut last year. So he is likely going to be handing off a lot to McCoy, and, just short, easy, high percentage passes to McCoy as well. But I don't know what's going to happen. I'm sure they're going to stack the box on him and not let him get anywhere, because he's just got no other weapons. He's got nothing else. Like what, Kelvin Benjamin? What's Kelvin Benjamin going to do? He's built like a tight end. I don't know. So yeah, again, so use them, start them, absolutely, but with caution, and make sure that you sort of fill out the rest of your roster accordingly. Who else do I got? Okay, so let's move on to some tight ends. We got Kyle Rudolph. You probably drafted him as your tight end 1, just reinforcing, start him. He's good for a touchdown. ASJ, Austin Shafarian-Jenkins. So yeah, start him against the Giants in their weak secondary. I expect something to come from him, and I don't really know what's going to happen with their wide receivers. It could be Didi's week, it could be Cole's week, it could be Moncrief's week. I don't know how it's going to pan out. If it's going to be sort of one guy getting more looks one week than the other, depending on matchups. No idea. So just stick with ASJ, or so better said, stream ASJ if you're streaming, and you're likely to come out with a touchdown, I'd say. Benjamin Watson. So last time he played in New Orleans, he put up some pretty good numbers with Breeze. Breeze hasn't really had a tight end since Jimmy Graham, and I guess you'd say Ben Watson as well. So, yeah, you know, I expect this to be a high-scoring game, if nothing else, New Orleans to score a lot of points on Tampa Bay. So keep an eye out for Watson streaming-wise as well. Which makes me just sort of come to this. Tyler Eifert, I know he's a Band-Aid. I know he's hurt all the time, but he's playing this week, and he's playing against the Colts. That changes the whole dynamic of the Bengals offense because they can't just sort of, you know, double-team A.J. Green just for the fact that Eifert's going to be lurking around. At least he'll be up there as long as he doesn't get hurt. But that's another guy to keep an eye out for because a lot of people may have overlooked him in 12-team leagues, and he could be sitting there on waivers. So, you know, pick him up. That's a guy to stream. I mean, he had last time he played a full season, I think he had like 14 touchdowns. So, again, keep an eye on him. So, keep an eye out for him. Kittle, don't start Kittle. I've got him on one of my teams, and, I made this sort of silly mistake of drafting him, not really seeing that they were playing the Vikings in the first week. Again, I got him like right at the end of the draft because there wasn't too much there. I was sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel. But, yeah, don't start him against Minnesota. Stream one of the guys that I just mentioned. Evan Engram, just I don't know. Well, first of all, there's a lot less targets to go around this year because Shepard's back on the field, OBJ's back on the field. Barkley's going to be catching passes out of the backfield, so he's not going to have the sort of like he was the first look for a while there. That was a pretty sad state of affairs in New York with all the injuries they had. So he's not going to get any of the looks that he got last year. I know you probably drafted him in the 5th, 6th round, but if you got somebody else on the bench. If you see somebody else on waivers, one of the guys I mentioned before, consider streaming them. So this is a sort of, who knows what's going to happen. But Jalen Samuels, so, okay, in Yahoo Fantasy Leagues, he's listed as a tight end / running back. He can catch the ball. He's got good hands. Vance McDonald's out this week. He's their starting tight end. So you're going to be and obviously Bell's going to be out. So those, and he was the third down. He's the bell cow, right? He was the first, second down back, and he's also catching the passes of the backfield. So you can call him the third down back as well. He's not there. Connor's going to be, the guy giving the ball to run the first couple downs. I'm just saying maybe Samuels is going to be getting some catches out of the backfield. Maybe he's going to be lining up at tight end too. So just something to think about. And in daily, I think he's only listed as a tight end, just as a running back. So don't bother with DFS with him. Some Ds, I think you keep an eye on his stream. And Lions are playing around with the Jets. The Jets are terrible. Carolina's playing Dallas, and I don't know who Prescott's going to throw the ball to. I have no idea. My money's on Gallup, but we'll know tomorrow. And then the Ravens D, which has probably already been snatched up, but obviously you want to play those guys. Bad weather, playing at home against the Bills. Cool. Okay, so let's move on to DFS values. So I'm going to start with some of the higher end guys and just say these are guys that I'm targeting in some of my DFS games. I'm using DraftKings as the sort of barometer for price. I maybe will bring FanDuel in later on, but I just had time to look at the one. So okay, so let's get this party started. And then I'm going to move on to values too after this. Okay, so and some of this is going to mirror the conversation I just had about starts and sits before. And I'm going to talk about some sleepers. I think I already said that. All right, so Andy Dalton, $1,500. So he's wildly cheap at quarterback. Guy you might want to pick up because he's playing against the Colts and their terrible secondary. So with that, that's when you might want to consider a stack. AJ Green is the most likely first guess at $7,300. But and only stack one. In my opinion, I don't think you need to start putting a whole team in there because they start cannibalizing the points. But maybe instead of Green, you want to put Eifert or you want to put Ross. Eifert's sitting at $3,400. Ross is sitting at $3,900. So just something to consider when you're putting your teams together. Phil Rivers, $6,400 against KC. I like it, so he'll be on a couple of my teams as well. I'm throwing Keenan Allen with him because those guys were just tearing it up the last half of last season. So I expect that to continue this year, especially with the good start they're going to have against the Chiefs. James Conner, $4,500. Was mentioning him before. So same thing. There's no Lev Bell and who knows what's going to happen with Antonio Brown, whom I'm going to talk about in a second. Just a second. I got a little battery here. We don't want to deal with that. Okay, so OBJ is down to $7,000. I want you to consider him. First of all, that's a pretty nice discount. It's probably about $1,500 off what he'd normally be. But then with that being said as well, Ramsey is playing, but Hopkins had a big year last year, and a lot of these top tier guys are able to sort of, break through Jacksonville and still have a big week. I mean, the superstars can usually sort of trump the superstar corners. But again, somebody to consider. So Melvin Gordon, $1,600. I like that. Maybe not if you're already stacking Rivers and Keenan Allen, but keep an eye out for Melvin Gordon. He could have a big week too. Remember, this is PPR, right? And he passes out of the backfield as well. Chris Hogan sitting at $6,100. Remember, they're only suiting up 3 wide receivers. So yeah, that's a guy that's going to be on some of my teams, maybe even over Gronk. I think Gronk's at $6,900, but there's some value at tight end that you can get way, way, way further on. Joe Mixon, I'm not a big Joe Mixon fan. I kind of want to see it from him this year, as the first, second down back to really see what happens with him. I'm sort of in a wait and see mode, but I know a lot of people are going hard on him playing against Indy. He's $6,100, so I'm going to throw him out there and say he'll be on a couple of my teams too. Jamaal Williams, $6,000. It's his backfield right now. So until Aaron Jones gets back, it's his chance to prove it. He's a great pass protector. So I think that Aaron Rodgers likes him a bit more too, and I expect him to get some run this week just for the fact that I expect them to be up on the Bears. But I'm also interested to see how the Bears offense looks. I think it's going to be pretty cool. Jarvis Landry, weather's going to be terrible as we said, but good possession guy coming out of the slot. He's only $5,500 to PPR, right? So he could catch 7-8 balls. Who knows? And it's a pretty good value. Carlos Hyde. So if the weather's going to be as bad as they say, he's going to be running the ball. If he gets you a touchdown and say he gets 15 carries, then you're looking at some value there, $4,500. Quincy Enunwa. All right. So even though I expect Denver to, crush the Jets, I think Darius Slay's going to be lined up on the outside. I think he's becoming Robbie Anderson. I think that Enunwa was going to be, he's got sort of that tight end build. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the slot or line up a little bit closer to the tight end. And he's sitting at, what is he at? He's at $4,400. So somebody to keep an eye on. Bring me back to my man Kenny Stills. He's on a lot of my fantasy. I'm in 11. That's embarrassing. I'm in 11 fantasy leagues, and he's on probably like 6 or 7 of them. Might just pick up the end of drafts. He's going to be the first, one of the first looks for Tannehill, and I expect them to be passing the ball quite a bit. Michael Thomas. Okay, so these are guys I'm not so high on. So Michael Thomas, even though I expect that to be a big game, I expect him to be up kind of quick, and guys like Thomas to kind of be shut down. So he might get a big long catch with a touchdown attached to it, and he might not. And he's $7,800. So I think your money can be spent better elsewhere. I'm not touching Mike Evans. I know there's some discount on him with all his talent, $6,700, but I'm passing on him. Dougie Baldwin, for reasons I stated earlier, he's $6,200, but no thank you. Leonard Fournette. So I think they might. I think they might take it easy on him. I mean, what is it? Foot, ankle issues, heel issues. I mean, he's issues around his foot, and I just don't see them giving him 20 plus carries the first week of the season, and he's $7,100. So again, I think there's some value elsewhere. For reasons I stated before, Dalvin Cook and LaShawn McCoy, $6,200, $6,000 respectively. I don't think you should be touching another one of those guys. All right, now here's one that's up to you. Antonio Brown is $8,600, so he's the most expensive wide receiver. The weather's going to suck. Ben's crappy on the road, but when Le'Veon Bell doesn't play, Antonio Brown lights it up. He crushes. He gets, I think he averages, he averages like 10 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown every game that Bell hasn't played in the past few years. So that's dealer's choice. That's up to you. He could have a huge week, and he could be a bust. I don't know. All I know is that if there's anybody that's going to be able to catch a slippery ball, that hopefully can get thrown him properly with Ben on the road in bad weather, but he could light it up this week. So that's sort of a wild card there. You could be contrarian. You could go after Brown, or you could be conservative and not. It's up to you. Okay, so super sleepy. Sleep time. These are some guys I think they're, and I really like getting some value picks at like wide receiver 3 and in the flex, or it's better said like RB2, because that just takes the pressure off picking all these other players, right? So if you get a guy in there for like $3,700, that gives you more money. That gives you more money to get, a couple superstars that you think are going to have big weeks. So I always like to have 1 or 2 sleepers on my team. Don't get crazy. I mean, these guys aren't guaranteed to hit. But let me just go through a list here and tell you some guys that I'm targeting on some of my DFS teams. So Danny Amendola mentioned above, good possession guy, slot. He's not hurt right now. Tannehill love throwing Landry Jones, or to Jarvis Landry. So that might be a guy you want to take a risk on. $4,200. I think it's a risk we're taking. PPR league or PPR scoring. Remember that. All right. So Wilkins, Marlon Mack apparently is going to be a game time decision. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but I'll tell you this: if it's his backfield, so if he's the RB, or it won't be an RB1, if he's the main guy getting the ball for Indy, you might see something from him, right? So you might see a touchdown. You might see, you might get 12, 15 carries for $3,700. Sweet, that's I'd be in on that. So James White. Okay, so from what I understand, Sony Michel's out. Burkhead's going to be in. So I don't know if they're going to take it easy on him or not. I don't ever know what they're going to do, what Belichick's going to do with that backfield from week to week. But I do know this: James White will be the pass catching running back. He is not hurt. This is PPR scoring format, and they've got Dorsett, who Brady wanted nothing to do with. Phil Dorsett is their third wide receiver. They got Cordell Patterson, who's a bit of a nuts and bolts gadget guy. And then you got Chris Hogan and Gronk. So somebody else is going to be getting the ball, right? That's a high-powered offense that spreads the ball around. So James White could get some looks, and he's $4,000, and he can have big games, man. A little bit risky here, but again, Michael Gallup, I don't know. I think he's going to be the guy that's going to be getting the ball in Dallas. I don't know yet, but hey, you could have a big week. You could have a big week with him for $4,000. So if you wanted to slip him in as your wide receiver 3 and see how it goes, there you go. So got some value at tight end. So we got JReed, who's not hurt yet. He's $4,000, and okay. We know that Alex Smith likes throwing. He doesn't like throwing deep. I know he was throwing deep last year, but he likes these, not say short checkdowns, but I mean he just likes those high percentage throws. And he used to like throwing at Travis Kelce. Big generalization here, but hey, that's a tight end. JReed's a tight end. But anyways, I think that's the best set of hands in Washington's offense. He's not hurt. He's on the field, and he's $4,000. So there you go. He'll be on some of my teams too. KCole's $3,800. It sounds like it's going to be it sounds like Bortles is going to be looking at him first. I don't know yet. I have no idea. I don't know if it's Moncrief or Westbrook, but if I was going to, if I was a betting man, which I kind of am, then $3,800 on a bet on KCole isn't so bad to me. Okay, here's one. Mike Gillislee. Okay, so I think the New Orleans is going to run the score up against Tampa Bay a little bit. And at that point, I think that they're not going to be like, just keep feeding the ball to Kamara. I think they might start giving the ball to Gillislee. So, check that out. If he starts playing the Engram role, who knows? Maybe he gets 15 carries and a touchdown. I don't know. But he's super cheap. He's $3,400. Somebody to consider. All right. So, for kind of reasons stated above and early before when I mentioned him as a guy to start, Ben Watson is $3,300 at tight end. So that's a guy you might want to take a look at as well. But then you got Tyler Eifert. A lot of value at tight end this week. $3,400. And again, a lot of these guys are injured a lot. They're not banged up yet, right? So Tyler Eifert's $3,400. And he'll turn around some value. If he catches a few balls and gets you a touchdown, you just got some value on your $3,400. Money well spent. Maybe, hopefully. John Ross, $3,900. I mentioned a stack with either Eifert or Green or Ross. Maybe you want to go with Ross. Maybe a nice deep throw from, a nice 40-yard toss from Dalton to him and a touchdown. There you go. Boom. Boom goes the dynamite. Remember that guy? Okay, so he's $3,900. So maybe you want to keep an eye on him as well. All right, so, last off, I'm going to talk to you about bets. So if you've listened to some of my shows before, I'll get into it really quick. So I don't mind betting over-under. I don't mind betting spreads. It's fine. I don't touch parlays. I just don't think you get any value on those. So, stacking a few of these bets together, let's just get that out of the way. Okay. So second up, over-unders. Yep, those are fine. I bet on those sometimes. Spreads are fine. I bet on those sometimes. I like betting on the winner because, those coaches on both sides of the field and those teams are yelling at each other to win, and they're strategizing to win. They're not strategizing to cover. So that's what everybody's there for, is to win or to lose, right? I mean, I know it sounds stupid to say it, but that's why, it's all cool, man. Like they're up by, they're picked to win by 6.5. Well, man, they might just shut it down if they're up by 4. Like it so much depends on gameplay. And I know, there are upsets. Okay, long and short, I'm rambling on. This is how I bet, and I have success at it. And I'm not knocking on wood or nothing. This works for me. Is I look for value on what I think is a sure thing or close to a sure thing. So I'm looking at like minus 200 around there. So like 2-1. That was like, you see New England, it's minus 400. So you're not going to get any money if you bet a whole bunch of money. But I don't mind betting, okay, as an example, $2 and winning $1 on something I think is a sure thing or close to it. So 2 things I'm looking at this week, or 2 games I'm looking at, and I put a bit of something on this week. Rams over the Raiders, sitting at around, I think it's at minus 210. So, quick example, right? If you were to put like $10 on that game, you're probably getting, what would it work out to, like $4.75, something like that. So you're betting more to win less, but to me, these games and week 1 is tough, right? Week 1's tough because, I don't know, I just found there's a lot of upsets, a lot of weird stuff going on in the first week of the season, but the Rams are just well put together. The Raiders are not. I don't care if they're playing in Oakland. You're giving me roughly 2-1 odds. I'm going to take that. Second one I want you to take a look at is the Chargers over the Chiefs. Minus 180. Again, I think maybe people are carrying over that, Andy Reid owns Phil Rivers and he owns the Chargers. Well, I just think it's going to be different this year. So minus 180, I'm going to take those odds too. Okay, so to recap, what did we talk about today? We talked about sleepers. We talked about sit. We talked about start. Who to sit, who to start for quarterbacks, for running backs, for tight ends, a couple Ds that I think you could stream. We talked about DFS. We talked about some higher-end guys that I think you should take a look at, some stacks that I think would be valuable, and then we looked at some sleepers. Guys sitting around $4,000, between $3,000 and $4,000. Lastly, I looked at a couple bets. Okay, so that's it. That's all. So just to let you know, as we go into week 1, so I am going to do a episode just like this every week before Sunday. So it's going to be a sit, start, sleepers, DFS picks. It's going to be coming out probably Friday or Saturday. And then Sunday or Monday, probably Monday, I'm going to be doing a waiver pickup, guys to targets, maybe guys to drop. Those are going to be dropping every week. So at least two are going to be coming out every week. So definitely subscribe to this channel. Like it. And if you've got any comments, you agree with me, you disagree with me, comment here or comment to me on my Twitter handle below. All right, so good luck this week, everybody, and I will see you soon.